Welcome back to the Anton Stetner podcast. And today we're talking about how Trump's back and it's bad for real estate. I thought he was a businessman. I thought he was going to be good for the economy, including real estate. What is going on? And tell us why you think Trump being back could be bad for real estate.
What's the promise? The promise is to make America great again. The second thing that happened yesterday in the election of the 47th president is the popular vote was won by quite a margin. He won the Electoral College. So now all of a sudden you're in a mandate. The American has voted with their pocketbook. They've voted with their feet. They've voted with their votes. And so Trump has to actually do this. But what if he's incorrect and he's going to make real estate worse again for like a moment in time? Okay, so hear me out here. I think whoever got elected because of the direction of the economy, we were headed for pain in real estate. So what I want to go through today, Benji, and all of our listeners, is I think we're going to short-term pain in real estate no matter what. I believe there's then solutions to this pain that President Trump and the Trump administration can take. And then I believe there's some long-term gain that people could be looking forward towards and working towards. That this might be some of the biggest gains in our lifetime, assuming the pain doesn't get so bad it just kills us off.
Yeah. And one thing I want to ask you is because literally we just recorded one or two podcasts previous to this saying that Trump was ultimately going to be better, not just for the economy, but real estate. But what we're going to be covering right now in this next section is the short-term pain.
Yes.
So tell me, why is the short-term pain so significant in regards to Trump winning the election yesterday?
So this started showing up very clearly in our financial markets. We covered this in the Trump trade episode, but when the stock market started rallying, the bond market is going up, crypto's going up, and gold's going up, and they're all going in the same direction. That's a problem. So with the bond market, when he won, what did it do this morning?
I'm not sure. I didn't look.
It rallied again, up, up, up. It's not what we want. That's inflationary. So part of this short-term pain is most of real estate pricing is in relation to the 10-year treasury. That's kind of where we model after. And then boom, it starts shooting up again. Why? Because they believe electing of Donald Trump is inflationary. So the bond market is pissed off at us. 10-year treasury yields this morning are flirting with the highs of 2023. So slightly less than October 23 and just below the peak of November 23. And it hasn't been this high since 2007. Let that date ring in your brain for a second, aka pre-Great Financial Crisis. The bond market's pissed off because we're 36 trillion in debt. Other countries like China, they're not buying as much of our debt as they did before. So this is causing mortgage rates to rise. They're currently over 7. They got worse this morning. We're recording this the day after the election. Okay, like that happened last night. Plus, what this means, and it's an indicator, and this is why we're talking about the pain, this means rates are going to be higher for longer. It means we're going to have more stress in the commercial real estate market. Means deals are coming. If you saw that Ken McElroy, he bought that building, I forget where it is, I believe it was somewhere in Nevada. A-class multifamily was priced at $140 million and he bought it for $92 or $94 million.
When was that?
He bought it like a few weeks ago. Why? Because that property needed to retrade at a discount due to the cost of debt. This is also putting additional stress on our regional banks and our local banks. So why do I talk about this? Why should you even listen? I've been doing real estate for 20 years. I've done thousands of transactions, and I pay attention to the data, the trends, the numbers, what's happening, so that our clients and our subscribers know how they can make money and how to also position themselves when there's something coming, because this is still a problem, but we've got solutions on the back end of this.
Can I look at the same thing, make
Yes.
the same observation, but with a different perspective?
Ooh, you're going to straw man me or steel man me?
I'm not going to steel man you. I'm just going to maybe explain what the average investor is doing and maybe even the speculator is doing.
Ooh,
so you talk
yes.
about how Trump getting elected is inflationary. Well, what does that mean to the average person? What's happening is, generally speaking, people think Trump is good for business and good for the economy. So investors, everybody from investing in cryptocurrencies to stocks to all kinds of investment, vehicles, are saying, "Hey, he's going to help make the market so much better." So they're jumping in.
Yes.
And we saw this when the attempted assassination on him happened and he survived that. Everyone just assumed, dude, there's no way he's not going to be president. Boom, everybody jumped in. So I can speak to cryptocurrency people because they're the biggest speculators and they don't just look at the market. It's weird because there isn't really a market to look at because it's so volatile, because it's so young. But what they do is they look at outside of the market, not just stocks and other investments, but just what's happening in the world, geopolitics,
Yeah.
right? They become economists themselves. So they saw, hey, Trump got elected, and last night you just saw crypto go up, 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 and up.
Yeah.
Bitcoin hit a high.
All-time high.
All-time high. I was even like, had to
Yeah.
double check. I was like, did it really hit a...
Yeah, it ripped.
Yeah, because you would think that maybe that'd be like maybe a week out, right? Or a month out. No, it happened the same
Yes.
night because everyone's confidence in his ability to get the machine going and to better the economy, because that is his goal. So they're thinking, if that's the case, then if I buy now when it's low, I'm doing quotations because like what is really low, but they think it's going to go to even higher heights. So like give you an example with Bitcoin. All-time high was like 74,000 last night. They believe it's going to go to 100,000. So when do you want to buy into an investment? When it's lower than what you think it's going to be. That's what's happening across the board. And why this is inflationary is as the price goes up, that's going to just be more inflationary for two reasons. One, things just are going to cost more.
Yes.
And then secondly, the Federal Reserve has to potentially tamper down on that inflation.
Bingo.
And they can't lower the interest rates.
Bingo.
So that's why short term, Trump is bad for real estate, because there's all this excitement. And we know when there's excitement and speculation, people tend to make buying decisions that are based off of future promise versus like what do the numbers tell me? Is that a correct way of saying it from a different perspective?
Same beach ball, different side of the beach ball. That's exactly it. People are speculating, but the problem is when money starts moving in to assets, then the bond market has to respond, and that's causing rates to rise.
Specifically, mortgage rates are going to rise.
Specifically, mortgage rates.
What did it hit today?
It was like 7.11. Yeah, no, it's bad.
What was the highest at like a year or two ago?
The highest like a year or two ago was we almost hit 8. It was like 7.
But still, the fact that we're like 7 to 8 right now is nuts.
The fact that we're over 7 and that just 90 days ago you could have got a 6.11, and then the bond market started responding to this and it ripped straight up. It went past a 50% retracement line. It's almost back to its all-time high over the last, since 2007. So it's sitting there moving in the wrong direction.
With
crypto.
Well, I meant high mortgage rates with record high home prices.
Record high home prices, record high unaffordability, record high inflation. So people are their pocketbooks are being pinched. So this is what I'm trying to get our listeners' head wrapped around. This is pain. We believe there's solutions, and we believe there's long-term gain, but you have to now position yourself slightly different. You have to twist things around. So another warning flare. Nick T for the Wall Street Journal, He's a known Fed leaker. He leaks out the information. He's the mouthpiece. They're like, hey, Nick, can you just go spread this out to the world? Nick came out with his article, 25 basis points. So that's where the Fed's most likely going to cut this week. And by the time this gets out, the cut will most likely have happened by the time our phenomenal editors get it done. But the Federal Reserve, I guarantee when they saw the bond market rip and shoot up and other assets shoot up, I think Jerome Powell probably texted his homies, the other people on the board, and was like, do we maybe need to go 50? Do we need to pull a bigger cut? And I know I'm in a small camp on this one. Do we maybe need to pull a bigger cut, a 50 basis cut? Because as the bond market rises, it becomes more restrictive on the government, more restrictive on business, more restrictive on private individuals, more restrictive on credit, more restrictive on housing. So the Fed's cut that happened is currently getting more restrictive. So they might have even last night or this morning had that conversation. Hey, boys and girls, we might have to cut 50. Now, I don't think that's going to happen.
Isn't that the opposite of what they should do?
Because the bond market is getting so high, it's the opposite, but it's making it so restrictive, it's cutting off the oxygen supply to the whole economy. And if unemployment starts to jump, and we had bad jobs report, okay, especially when you back out healthcare and government jobs. That was a horrible jobs report. And if you go, wait a second, if the government wasn't spending and healthcare wasn't hiring, that was a horrible jobs report. And Papa Powell knows this. So he's going, well, maybe what should we do? I'm just telling you more rate cuts are coming because they have to. Otherwise, unemployment's going to spike. Next thing, I think the Federal Reserve is getting slightly worried that they're losing control of the bond market. The bond market should not have been, the 10-year specifically, should not have been hovering around 3 and now be over 4.
Because it's now going in the opposite direction of the Fed. That's what you mean, right?
Bingo.
They're not traveling together. And the bond market is reflective of what people feel and their confidence, as well as the reality of the market.
Make it bigger, not just people, governments, hedge funds, private equity, insurance companies.
Like other countries.
Other countries.
Other countries' central banks even.
Other countries' central banks. They park our treasuries in there to keep their currencies alive so they can be able to exchange things back and forth. An interesting paper that the Federal Reserve released. Yeah, I'm going to nerd out here for 2 seconds. Do you know where a bunch of stablecoin money is going?
No.
To keep Tether, to keep USDC stable, they're buying our treasuries. Okay? So it's not just these entities. It's not just these countries. It's crypto too is also part of this treasury market. Understand the bond market is huge. It's bigger than the stock market. So I think the Fed may have a little bit of fear that they're losing control. The next one, he's talking about this implementation of tariffs. We talked about the tariffs before. 10% tariffs up to rumor. Now this is rumor. But there was speculation that he could put a 60% tariff on some of the stuff coming out of China. Okay, put on your real estate hat, put on your real estate lens.
How about your tool belt and your Home Depot?
Put on, bingo.
Like shopping cart
Bingo.
head on.
That's exactly what I want our listeners to think about.
It's going to be more expensive.
This table, probably from China. The carpet, probably from China. All this stuff that goes into a house, China. Okay, so if all of a sudden we start putting tariffs on it, that means Home Depot, Lowe's, more expensive to remodel, more expensive to flip, more expensive to renovate. But it's also more expensive to build the new construction homes. So these tariffs, we have massive potential to increase all construction costs. Now we're going to go into a hot topic. Don't shoot the messenger. I love all of you. Immigration. The talk is deportation, that they're going to go deport some of the illegals, especially some of the 15,000 that were super violent criminals that ended up here. My mom is an immigrant. My grandparents on my dad's side are immigrants. I am 1,000% for immigration, but I'm for proper, consistent, sustained immigration. Well, problem is, though, immigration also feeds into the labor force, and it feeds into the construction labor force at a huge level. It provides cheap labor to build homes cheaper. If we go and pinch down on immigration, and we got tariffs, and it costs more money, all of a sudden construction is slowing down. And what's happening to building permits and development applications right now, brother?
It's horrible.
It's horrible. They're going down. Okay, so we're gonna restrict some immigration. Well, unfortunately, that's going to pinch. It's going to pinch the labor supply. Lastly, no, not even lastly, the growing deficit's a problem. The president, it didn't matter if it was going to be Republican or Democrat. If you go and look at the predictions were that the deficit under whoever became the next president was going to grow by another $5 to $10 trillion.
No matter what, because no one's willing to cut enough to really make a dent. So it doesn't matter if you're fiscally responsible or fiscally free. The name of the game is like, if your budget per month is $10,000, like in your household, I don't know if that's a lot or not. It's hard to go down to 4,000 the next month. You might have to do it gradually, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Exactly. So this is part of the reason the bond market's so pissed off at us, is go to the Federal Reserve's website, look up our national debt, and watch it just, like we've been talking about this morning, just rip. It just rips straight up and goes vertical. And we're currently running every 90 days, $1 trillion in the hole. So this has got to be plugged so the bond market calms down. So it says we're not drunk sailors just spending all of our money.
But the other 2 points you made earlier make it worse, because higher interest rates and tariffs on products for any country, expenses go up, so that deficit gets worse too. Because if the government wants to do something, they don't get like a special discount. They pay what the market pays, and we've know the $1,000 hammer, right? Story. So, wow.
So this right here is, once again, I don't think it mattered who won. We were headed into this pain regardless. Okay. However, this is now Trump's problem. So let's talk next about what are solutions to these problems that his administration, the cabinet, the American public, our investors can start really thinking about. Number one, the government needs to spend less money. We're $36 trillion in debt. The government has to get more efficient. We've got to slow down the spending, and we've got to get the inflation under control so the bond market will cool itself off. We cannot have the bond market ripping in an upward direction. Well, how could we do that? We could do that through the Department of Government Efficiency. So Elon went into Twitter, whether you like him or not. He made Twitter run with 80% less people. What if the government could run with just 10% less people? Would we save $1 trillion?
We'd save more than we are now.
Bingo. And that would start to plug that deficit hole. What if, because Republicans, and I think you said this is the first time in 100 years, we were talking before we started.
One of the first times in 100 years we've ever had a government that was all one party, from the executive branch, president, legislative branch, which is Congress, both Senate and the House, and judiciary, which is the judges. Okay, on top of it, the fact that he came back too.
Yes.
So that's never. I don't think that's ever happened. A president has never come back, and why that's significant? It's kind of showing the sentiment of the whole country, and this is the first time in 20 years the Republicans won the popular vote and the electoral vote.
Wow.
So they call this, this kind of thing when it happens, usually it's just like within the Senate or within the House. They call them red waves.
Yeah.
I'm calling this the red flood.
Yeah.
Now, and this is letting me nerd out on civics.
Yeah.
The reason we have the balance of powers is so we never get this, because when you get this, it's good for governance to get things done, but it's bad because then the pendulum can kind of swing too much.
Bingo.
So in this case, what's happening is everybody knows, oh, dang, not just Trump, but the Republicans, they're very pro-business.
Yes.
They're very let's make a lot of money. So investors and everyday people, which that's what they voted for. The number one reason why people voted was for the economy.
Yes.
And that's why Trump won. You can set aside all the ideology, all the politics, all your personal beliefs. People just wanted to not have to pay as much at the groceries, and they hate the high home prices. So when you talk about all these things converging, we've never been in this situation for so long. And 100 years ago, we didn't have internet. We didn't have digital currencies or communication at the speed of lightning.
Yeah.
So it's just new territory, and that's kind of like making this whole situation potentially scarier.
So when you look at it, we know we have the pain, but they have the resources that if they can get them in alignment, that they can make change happen. So let me give you an example. So we know that the Inflation Reduction Act is actually a massive spending bill that's creating a massive amount of inflation today. If they repeal the Inflation Reduction Act, they could clip that spending. That would slow down the deficit. That would slow down the government spending, which would be anti-inflationary and slow down inflation and calm down the bond market. So if we can get some government efficiency, we could repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. Possibly, and I'm just making things up. I'm not saying I like any of this. I'm giving you solutions to the problem. Because this next one I don't like. What if they killed off solar credits? What if they killed off EV credits? So if they kill off some of these credits, there's more taxes coming in, less stuff going out. So you get what I'm saying. Next item on the list. The pendulum is swinging this, and I forget the name of the court decision. I wish I remember. The Chevron. The repeal of the Chevron Act or decision or whatever it was is now started swinging the pendulum away from regulation. And now that the red flood, to use your words, is there, we may see a massive deregulation here in the United States, a massive cutting of red tape. So he said during his campaign speeches, regulation and red tape has become unbelievably burdensome for business. And so what that's doing is that's forcing that cost down to the average consumer. It's forcing it down the road. I dealt with a municipality yesterday locally here in Snohomish County. I had been asking for a meeting for 2.5 months. I called the director multiple times. I sent them an email showing every piece of communication, who was reached out to, what was said, email, text message, and phone call in every single one. Magically, I got a meeting the next day, but I had to really go force it.
You had to do their job, basically.
I had to do their job.
People are getting lazy and sluggish.
And then I get on the phone, Microsoft Teams. I get on Teams, and there's these kids who are brand new, who don't know anything, who can't answer any questions. And so I'm there like dad, and I'm 45, and I have to tell these kids, here's how we're going to do this, boys, and here's how would you see this happening? But we talked through it, and we started making some progress. But it sat there for 2.5 months. And so if we cut the red tape for land development, if we cut the red tape for building, we could reduce timeline and costs and make housing more affordable and housing attainable to the middle class and the first-time home buyer. This is passionate to my heart. We are killing the first-time home buyer and preventing the middle class from owning a home, and it pisses me off. Why? It shouldn't cost that much. It shouldn't take that long to get a freaking permit. And I realize I live in Seattle, and I realize we are a lefter-leaning state, so we're harder than most states, but dang it, it freaking pisses me off. Okay, we need to move on. So another way to do this, you could incentivize builders with tax credits, and we need to incentivize them to build that thing for that middle class, the starter home, the first-time home buyer, the smaller home. Because right now we're building McMansions. The average home is like 2,400 square feet. Where's the 700 square foot home? Where's the 800? Where's the 1,000? Where's that cute little 1,200 foot
1,200.
rambler?
That's a perfect. That was my first house. It was plenty. That was like a mansion for me.
Bingo.
Because I grew up in a 1,000 square foot house before.
Yeah. Yeah. My first house was 1,600 square feet, and I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I was like, it's so big. You know, pre-kids and all that. And then you get kids and you get all squished in. Also, I think someone's going to have to get in Mr. Trump's ear, and he's going to have to, he or she is going to have to deliver this message. I like your idea of protecting America through Trump or through tariffs. I like the idea of protecting America and bringing manufacturing home. But if we're bringing manufacturing home, and if we want to grow AI and we want to grow construction, and we bring in all this tariffs, it's going to be massively inflationary and it's going to slow down progress. I'm sure I missed some of these solutions, so hit that subscribe button, like, and let me know in the comments like what we're missing and what we should be talking about that are other solutions, because now we're going to go into this idea of like, okay, what was the pain? Here's some solutions, but where can I make gains? Like gains at the gym, big gains. How do I make these big gains?
As an investor or someone getting into real estate?
In real estate in general.
I have one comment I
Yes,
think
please.
bridges what you last talked about, no tariffs or small ones, and this next topic about, you know, long-term gain and massive opportunities. So the tariffs thing is interesting because you have to ask yourself, why is he doing the tariffs? I think there's really two reasons, and he's actually stated these. If you cut taxes for people and potentially give credits where it makes sense, like builders, well, that's less money for the government. We just talked about the deficit so big, like they need more money.
Yep.
On the flip side of that, they want to also cut government spending, right? But that might not happen very quickly. So how do they make it up without raising taxes? He's talked about this, that there's been times where tariffs are huge money makers.
Yep.
Now, it's short-term pain for long-term gain.
Sounds like what we're going for.
Yeah, because the other side of it too is he's doing it to level the playing field. China is an easy target, but I think there's many other countries like what he did with NATO. He's just trying to say, hey, if you're going to gain from us doing what we're doing over here, like we should have an equal gain as well. So the tariff is like trying to even the playing field a little bit.
100%.
But for long term, like this is what happens on the other side of the ocean, right? On the other side of Pacific. They're like, dang, they're not buying as much of our stuff because it's so expensive. We got to play by their rules. Yeah. That's what's so hard about this. This is what's so hard about all of it is we have to have some short-term pain because, you know, another thing I think about, and then let's get into long-term game and massive opportunities. All these people that voted him in because he's going to make the economy great. Well, if they're government workers and he has to cut jobs, some people might literally have to lose their job and going on an unemployment because they're part of the solution. Because like you said, those people, I'm not saying it's everybody, but what we know for sure from our profession and the experiences we've had with land development, there is a lot of waste.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Wasted time, just wasted positions.
Yes.
I mean, it does nuts.
And no one can make a decision quickly.
It's like they don't know what they're doing and you have to teach them when really you should be working with them to get things done faster.
I think the best land development projects is a combination of asking amazing questions, of teaching, of providing solutions, and learning to operate inside of the framework as efficiently as possible. And I think that's where all the money in land development is made, and that's where that lift happens. And for our listeners that don't understand, I want to drop this in so we're really 1,000% clear. The only way to fix the problem is you have to either raise taxes, lower government spending, or massively increase the productivity of the United States. Well, we know he's not going to raise taxes. So therefore, you have to increase the productivity of the United States and you have to cut spending because that's not his MO. So I want to set the stage. We're going to revisit for half a second. If we're thinking about long-term gain and massive opportunity under the second term of the Trump presidency, he just won the 47th election. And the long-term benefit, it's just on the other side of all that short-term pain that we talked about. And I'm saving the best one for last here. And the reason I'm saving the best one is this is the one that makes real estate investors the most money and I'm the most hyped about. So let's go through these. Number one, he wants to reduce the corporate tax rate from 21% down to 15%. Now, there are people who buy real estate who hold it inside of corporations, and if their tax rate was lower inside that corporation, they would have more to spend and more to buy real estate, which forces real estate prices up. If corporations are paying less in taxes, they have more to spend, which creates more innovation, more job growth. That is the theory behind this. He's talked about massive deregulation initiatives. So Trump mentioned, and we mentioned this already, this idea of it's become burdensome in the United States to run a business because of the massive regulation. And we know a lot of that regulation hits the real estate sector in the form of building permits, land development applications, timelines. If that stuff could be accelerated and if it could be changed, that could save as much as 20 to 30%. So the thing that I think the average listener doesn't understand, that our long-term subscribers understand, Benji, is that depending on where you're at in the country, 20 to 30% of the cost of the home is in relation to the red tape and the timelines and things like that. For example, for you to go grab a building permit here in the city of Marysville, it's almost 50 grand a unit. 50 grand. Well, what's the average home sell for? The average home sells for $675,000. So 10% of that's just the building permit. But wait a second. I didn't tell you about the land development, the carrying costs, and all the permits that went into that. Elon coming in, doging it, the Department of Government Efficiency, cleaning up the government. RFK making America healthy. Like if America was a little bit healthier, there would be less of a drain on Medicare, Medicaid, our healthcare system, the VA benefits that are provided. What if America was 5% healthier and they were taking 5% less prescription drugs? It would be less of a drain on the whole society. This is his quote. It's not mine. Drill, baby, drill. Mr. Trump said, it's all about the oil and regaining our energy independence. So if drilling reopens and fracking, well, not reopens, gets bigger, gets easier, gets quicker, fracking comes back, we're a petroleum-based economy. And if oil is cheaper and we're a petroleum-based economy, that means cash is moving faster and exchanging quicker, which speeds up the economy. Because remember, we talked about one of the ways to do this is make the economy boom and move faster. Next, this is not on his list, but I want it to be on the list. So I'm throwing this one in. As a side note, electricity production in the United States, the cost to produce a kilowatt hour has done nothing but go down. The cost of production for general electricity has gone down. But what's happened to your PUD bill?
Gone up. It's like, hey, who's getting the savings here? Who's making a buck off of us?
Bingo. The United States electric grid, the infrastructure, needs to be overhauled. We need to get rid of the red tape, the bureaucratic fat, because the actual cost of energy production has gone down while all consumers and all businesses' bills have gone up. This could massively help us with inflation. It's just government bloat. Also, if we're going to, be the AI innovation country, and if we're going to support crypto, what do those guys need?
They need support.
Power. They need a lot of electricity. We need a lot of cheap electricity. You know, it's to the point where we've got to start looking at nuclear power, at these small nuclear power things again. So this is part of my tangent. I get it, but this needs to go in there. One of the things he's talked about is expanding of opportunity zones again. Opportunity zones were areas throughout the country that needed money, so you could go in, you could put money into them, and then 10 years later, you could come out with money tax-free. That's phenomenal. It helps the blighted parts of America. I believe, and he's talked about this, providing tax incentives for land developers, small builders, okay? He's got to, how do I say this? He's got to go pull a Trump. And what I mean by that is he's got to get out there and be the actor and win the hearts and minds of the world so that we can get the bond market and the Federal Reserve and interest rates all moving in the right direction. So in his book, he talked about a chapter, and I read a ton of everyone's stuff. But in the book, The Art of the Deal, he was going to have to file bankruptcy. He went and found the banker who was in charge of that debt. He got invited to that dinner. he went and sat next to him, and hey, Benji, I owe you a lot of money. I don't got the money to pay you. We got to come up with a solution. Let's figure this out. We've got to do that with interest rates and the bond market and the Federal Reserve and the stock market and real estate and get them moving in the right direction and get that bond market coming down to get rates down. We know that we're going into a pro-business environment. Okay. We need that. Mergers and acquisitions have really been shut down. That stifles innovation. I know this is supposed to be about real estate, but if we're not having private equity being able to make investments, companies being able to grow massively, and then a Google, an Apple, a Microsoft, someone coming in to be able to gobble up that company and keep growing, without that ecosystem, we're losing innovation. And we're in a race right now with other countries, especially in AI, especially in tech. We have to keep that stuff moving at a high level. And then if that stuff is moving, of course, they're buying houses. All you have to do is look around the Seattle metro where we live. At the more tech booms, the more our real estate sector booms. Okay? As Boeing is going through their strikes right now, you know, in 42,000 or 46,000 people, that's starting to show itself in the local economy. But tech is buoying up the rest of it. Okay, last but not least, this is the golden nugget. This is the Glenn Ross leads. So in 2017, during his first administration, they passed the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the TCJA. And one of the provisions in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was known as bonus depreciation. Bonus depreciation is one of the largest things that we can do in real estate today. And I believe, because he got elected, this is going to get reignited. So I want to explain this real quick. So during the Trump administration, when this passed, you could get 100% bonus depreciation on items that could be expensed quicker. So if you go buy a building, let's just say you bought a duplex for conversation's sake. And the duplex is worth $1 million. And yes, we have duplexes worth $1 million in the Seattle metro very easily. The land is probably worth $300,000 and the structure is worth $700,000. The IRS assumes that structure falls down in 27 and a half years. So you take 700 divided by 27 and a half. And you just straight line depreciate everything. Well, the government, because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, said you can go get a cost segregation study. So an engineer comes in and they break down the carpet and the drywall and the lights and each item in the house, and they say some of this is going to fall apart faster and wear apart faster than the natural 27 and a half years. Therefore, we're going to aggregate that and allow you to take a bigger chunk in depreciation. So we were able to take hundreds of thousands in write-offs, millions in write-offs because of this. And I believe this is coming back because this actually started phasing out. Let's see if I wrote it down. It started phasing out in 2022, and it's completely phased out by 2027. And so it went from 100 to 80 to 60. And I believe they're going to kick this back up to 100. If they kick this back up to 100, hedge funds are investing, ma and pa is investing, regular investors, big investors, small investors to get that tax benefit. I'm one of them. More syndications, more real estate funds, more REITs.
What's happening here is this, to maybe somebody that's not really familiar, it sounds like, oh yeah, just rich investors getting more tax breaks. But what it's actually doing is shifting some of these tax breaks and credits from other things that haven't been serving our country. You could say that some of these green, environmental, like considerate kind of tax incentives hasn't helped us like as much as we would like it to.
Correct.
Housing. This is what's kind of crazy about this whole thing. No matter what, everyone can agree the housing cost is the number one cost.
Yes.
So when
we're in a housing crisis.
Yeah, we're in a housing crisis. So when people think about the economy, of course, groceries are part of it.
Yeah.
Your insurance is part of it, just general bills and utilities. But the house is the most expensive. Literally, people are determining how they want to live, not based off of how nice of a house they want, but literally how much of a house they can afford.
Bingo.
And I mean, I guess to a certain degree, that's just smart to do, but it was never to this extreme, to the point where people are putting off having kids.
Yes.
They're putting off maybe making a move. All kinds of stuff. So, okay, summarizing what you just said,
this is the biggest tax incentive for real estate. That's the summary.
And that's
it's probably gonna come back.
It's gonna promote people not only wanting to buy real estate or big, real estate investments.
It promotes real estate investment at a high level.
In turn, also putting more money into building more real estate.
Correct. It promotes building. It promotes land development. It promotes value add rehab. It promotes the whole sector.
Has he talked about doing this?
This has come through as a bill and been kind of bouncing around in Congress for a while. But because this was one of his cornerstones of his first presidency, this was his Shaquille O'Neal slam dunk. You can almost guarantee he wants to dunk again. So Congress is going to alley-oop it, and he's going to be like, hey, boys, kaboom, and just crack the backboard, because this is almost a no-brainer. Secondly, let's just talk about politicians in general. Who's the best stock trader of all time? Politician. Nancy Pelosi. Why? She feeds her own pocket. What's Trump going to do? Feed his own pocket. He's a real estate guy. Do you think this tax incentive would help him? Yes or yes?
Yes.
So this one's like, boys, I'm totally doing that. Kick me the alley-oop, let me break the backboard. So this makes me extremely, this is why I waited for last, bullish, long-term. We got to go through the short-term pain. You've got to position yourself properly in this short-term pain. We have to get these solutions moving. And it's going to be different for each one of our listeners depending on where you're at. So reach out to us, rsg.com. You can also always hit us in the DMs, because it's going to be different for each person where you're at on the pain that you're going to experience and then the long-term benefits that are going to show up. Because it's different based on how much cash you have. It's different based on your goals. What I love about this is I expect above average growth towards the second half of his presidency, and I want you to get positioned for that today, but realize I think there's a little more pain before we get there. It's not all roses. There's just not a magic fix that one person, he's not Superman, okay? And it wouldn't matter, once again, Democrat, Republican, didn't matter who got elected. We got to go through some of the pain because we printed too much money. But bullish long term. So what did I do this morning? This morning, I made 2 offers. Why am I making offers on real estate today? Because I'm long-term bullish. And our subscribers should be too.